All right, everybody. It is time for, I think, like episode 3 or episode 2, depending on how that episode 0 thing goes. I'm not sure. It's actually been like 2 weeks since I've edited or recorded this at all. I was very close to making a recording last week, and then I realized when I was editing the last episode that you guys saw pop up that I gave myself like a like a homework assignment, a thing to do, and I didn't do that. And so I've been struggling this week to do it, and I'm just realizing now that I'm going to kind of give up on that and just kind of wing it because I was stressing about it for most of this week about how I was going to get this done because the progress that I was making on it was kind of just skipping over that step, and it was hard to put that on hold and go back. And so now here I am, just realizing that progress is more important than procrastination. And so I got a little bit of it done, but if that's not clear what I'm talking about, um, where we left off, I said that we were going to. Uh, I was going to start writing like the story of what's going on for this like test 3 episode type of thing, and I came up with an idea of how I wanted the story to go. Not necessarily like down to the specific details, but essentially what I'm doing, if I can find my mouse again, is I'm making these little like blocks, and like, oh, here is a basic thing that happens in this. Like, oh, this is a puzzle room, and then like, what's the puzzle? Just like brief description of the puzzle, and then what's in this one? Oh, this is the boss fight, and then like, oh, this is how they get from one room to another, and then I got a bunch of these that I can just kind of mix around and put in different places as I please. So it's not too specific, but I got that down. And so what I did was I came up with like one set of those, and I said that when I came back next time that I would have a bunch of these, like a bunch of different sets, and that I would go through them all and choose what the best idea was. But what I accidentally did was is the first set that I came up with, I kept thinking about for like 2 weeks, and I was enjoying it. I was getting more detailed on it, elaborating more on it, and I was really enjoying it. And then so to come back and realize that I said like, oh, I'm going to make a bunch of these and choose which one. I already kind of had my heart set on that first one, and so it was really hard to come up with what I was doing. So I got my notes here. There actually isn't as many notes this time. So like the start of this video, it's gonna be like if I were to graph it, it's like the graph like, oh, here we are with like the level of professionalism and organization, and then by the end of the video, it's just that's what's gonna happen. And so I feel like there was something else I wanted to mention. Oh yes, it came to my attention, Project MUPS. I'm not the biggest fan of this name, but it's easy to say and easy to remember, I think. And my original acronym for it was Make Us Proud Someday, as something that my mom would always tell me that I always wanted to live up to. And it seems a little sad to use that name as something to do for like a test animation, but this is really the thing that I want to get me like kickstarted on this and get going. And it was brought to my attention that if you type in MUP or MUPS into Urban Dictionary, you get some silly stuff. Um, I could tell you some of them, but I'm not really sure what the audience that I'm going for these videos really are. It's not the most inappropriate things that I've seen on Urban Dictionary, but it's also not really the greatest. There were a couple in there that I actually kind of agreed with. There was quite a few of them. But anyway, it also was on my mind this week. Like, do I want to change this name because it has some other meanings? Um, for right now, I'm going to hold on to it. The only other thing I was able to come up with was kind of how I like to make these little homage shout outs to people that I enjoy on YouTube. Um, I think I mentioned in the episode 0 that there was a guy who did something called Adventure something. And please, if anybody for some reason saved that, please let me know because I want those files. I want to watch that again. It it was probably the most boring thing to so many people, unless you were someone like me who was really interested in 3D art and design type of stuff. But I really wish I could watch that again. So I was almost thinking like because he named that being like, oh, it's an adventure, and I'm not sure what it's about, so let's just call it adventure something. I almost thought about just calling this dungeon something because it's just a test animation of running through a dungeon, and I don't really know how it goes yet. So possible other name would be dungeon something. But I don't know. I'm gonna leave that there for now. All right. So on this piece of paper that I have, I am going to run through the building blocks that I came up with for this story, and I'm sort of changing my mind a little bit as I was thinking on this about the start of it having just branched off into three separate directions, and the story is following these characters over here, whereas the rest of the party went over here to make it sound like there was more people when really you don't actually see them. When that was all well and dandy until I tried to come up with these other storylines, and then it really clicked in my head that says like, hey, you know how in shows that you watch, they the episode like kind of builds and builds and builds, and then right as it gets to the climax, they do a hard cut away, and it just takes you to something else that another team is working on, and you're thinking like, but I want to see how this happened. Now I'm watching this, and then that cuts away and goes somewhere else, and you're just waiting like, what? I want to see the ending of these. Why are you making me wait? And then there's that like one final where it shows the climax of all three of them at once, and you're just like, whoa, this is it. This is when it's happening, and it builds that hype. And so I am, after trying to come up with all these different scenarios, I am questioning if I want to start with these guys, get them going a little bit, set up the story with them, and then as things get to be more climactic for them, kind of do one of those like cut away and start this episode with these people, build that up, and then cut away from that. I mean, when you're planning that, you almost feel like some sort of evil villain. You're like, oh, I'm going to rile them up and make them hope for something, and then I'm going to make them wait. And it just feels kind of evil. But at the same time, I feel like that's the professional way to do things, and it builds that hype. And I should try and practice and see what that feels like. I don't know. So I might actually include some of these other parties. It just means having to make like 6 more characters. But honestly, I kind of need to make a female base anyway. And to change the characters up isn't all that hard if I do it the cheap way. The real way is to come up with a design on paper of a dude and all these people and model them and rig them individually. But the cheap way is to come up with one base dude. I should just be drawing stick figures. That would make more sense. That Okay, I need a trophy for that one right there. That was literally the worst stick figure I've ever drawn in my life. But the cheap way is to make the one dude and just kind of copy him over many times, change their hair and whatnot, and oh, uh, and change up their clothes. And the only like problem with that is that their facial features are kind of the same, but I am able to kind of scale them and make them a little bit taller or shorter. I can try and add other things to the face to make it a little bit different, change the eye color, maybe just like rescale the nose or change the angle on it, and that can be done. And I think that's the route I'm going to go for right now because I want to get into animation. I'm not trying so hard with getting all the modeling and stuff perfectly right. And I promise you, when I actually get to using Blender in this series, I'm going to actually put effort into it, unlike my drawings. My drawings I am not caring because this is the part I just want to get past, and that's why nothing is super well drawn. I'm not really the kind of person that can draw really well, really quickly while talking at the same time. I'm just making shapes to kind of get my point across. And so what's always bothered me is that I always stress so much about getting my models to look good that I never got to actually do very much animating with them. And it's the animation that I need to practice with, so I'm not going to try super hard on making these characters so different from each other and making a model for each specific one. I just want to try this out, you know. Anyway, So I wrote a lot on this paper, and there's two main parts that I could get started with. I think what I'm going to do, if anyone else is trying to come up with a story like this, that's kind of action-paced, I recommend starting like this. I kind of feel like I don't want to start with this, but I'm not going to remember to come back to it if I don't right now. What I did was, obviously, while keeping this clipboard on me while playing video games, I was thinking in my head about the cool mechanics that I was coming across while playing games, and I wrote down like the basic like objective that was going on without describing where it came from, and just made a list of those so that if I ever came up with a moment of like, oh, what do I want to happen in this room? What do I want this boss fight to be like? I literally have a list of objectives to complete, and I don't know if it'd be easier to just type them or write them. I actually am not certain how to do typing in this program, so here we go with handwriting. I'm sorry. So first one we have, I'm going to switch to a different color real quick. I might actually do this on a different layer so it'll be easy to delete later. Let's do something easy to see. These ones are too hard to see. Let's do red. I like red. First one I just wrote diffuse charge. So you can literally take this whatever way you want and turn it into anything you want. You can have something in the room that is charging up and you need to go and run and like destroy the machine that's charging it up before it finishes. You can have it be something that the person's carrying around that they have to take it somewhere. And essentially something is happening that it is building up and you need to stop it. And so that's what that objective is. The next one was capture and return. Basically this means you can't get to where you're going because there's like a door in your way or something is locked, and the only way to open it is by putting the key in the lock, and you have to go and get the key, but the key in the room is difficult to get to, so you have to go and grab it. Maybe it's something big and heavy, so it limits the person's mobility and actions as they're running around with it, and they have to bring it back, and it's kind of difficult in that sense. Yeah, I'll just try and keep these sectioned off here. I don't know if I want to write them all down or if I should just kind of go over them real quickly. I have kill at same time. Basically, if you've ever played any Call of Duty game ever, there's that moment where you're being all sneaky beaky and everyone's talking in those accents because you don't know where in the world you're at right now, and all the snipers seem to have that accent, and they're like, all right, we're coming in real sneaky, we gotta be quiet, we can't let these people know that we're here, but we have to get by them. So what we're gonna do, I got the guy on the right, and when you tell me to, you get the guy on the left, okay? So we're gonna get them at the same time, and he counts down like 1, 2, 3, and then you both try and get a headshot at the same time so that they both fall down silent and they're like, all right, now we can move on, kind of thing. And no one's alerted because they both were bipped at the same time. That's kind of going the sneaky route, but this could also mean, I think there were a few moments in Destiny, because I keep mentioning Destiny because that's my obsession right now, where there is a boss that has a shield, and the only way to knock out that shield is that there's these other like mini bosses in the room that only if all of them are dead at the same time does the main boss's shield go out, and trying to get them all down to a really low health and then attack them all at once to knock out the big boss shield, and things like that. You can take this anywhere you want. It's kind of fun to come up with these things and keep a list of them. Then we have jam a machine. Whatever it's doing, make it stop. Now we have charge a battery and deliver. My handwriting is getting worse because I'm wanting to do this less and less. But find the real one in a crowd of many. Essentially, if you've played the multiplayer for Assassin's Creed, you're in a city filled with the same 5 people, just duplicated all over the place, and you have to find the actual real person in that crowd and attack them. And attacking the wrong one has a penalty. I think Fairy Tail did this once and it was kind of awesome to watch. Another way you can interpret this is kind of like, maybe not, see, is it a separate one or is that the same one? Did I mix them together on my notes? Okay, it's a separate one. I'll come back to that. Then we have activate relic. An aura moves from person to person, and only they can damage. So that one is kind of like you go into the room, you find this glowing thing, someone grabs it, and they start glowing in that same way, and only that person who is glowing can hurt the boss. But periodically through the fight, that glow moves from person to person, and so only the one who is randomly holding this glow is the one who's able to do damage. And then you could throw in some other elements like, oh, at this time the boss cannot be hurt by this type of damage, and it's just a constant juggle. Next we have, I just wrote while atop a train, because when you are fighting in an environment that is moving, it's kind of exciting and thrill type, whatever. And then here's the one I said I'd come back to. It's find the sneaky thing. In other words, Harry Potter fans would remember this better than me. The golden snitch. There's something going on real crazy, and there's this really tiny thing running around that you got to find that can just finish things off. By the way, I'd never made it all the way through the Harry Potter things. Did a Quidditch match ever end without them finding the golden snitch, or did they just do that every time? Then we have... okay, this one needs a little bit of explanation. It's from Destiny 2. I was doing kind of like a raid thing with Brandon. There was this massive dark pit and this really tiny sliver thing on the wall that we were running across, and there were these things on the sides that periodically would just shoot a blast out the side and just knock you off into the pit. And there was just tons of these, and you were having to run across the tiniest little bit of ledges, hugging the wall as tight as you could and trying to avoid these things blasting you. And we just kept calling them boopers, so I wrote down slim boopers on my notes here. You can also interpret this as a Wipeout, if you've ever seen that show on TV. Things like that. And then I have laser puzzle. There is, I want to say, if you've ever played RuneScape, I think it's Plague's End. There is a puzzle that is in a pyramid. There is several tiers in this pyramid. To move around, it was a whole parkour map, so you had to do all these crazy jumps and flips and climbing up ladders and jumping down holes just to get around. But there was also a laser at the bottom and a thing at the top that connected it, and you had to turn these poles around to redirect where the laser was going, and sometimes you even had to direct it like up a floor, back down, over here, and it was so difficult and frustrating. That's why I wrote it down, because it was just something that made me mad. It took a long time, and not gonna lie, I had to use a guide because I was not gonna do that on my own. Almost done. Then we have Shadow of the Colossus, which I don't think I need to explain a whole lot about that one. Basically, you're fighting something, it's very big, and you have to climb on top of it and fight while you're on top of it, I guess you can think of like the Scarab on Halo, where it's this gigantic spider thing walking around with a big cannon shooting things on the ground, and you're this little dude running around in here fighting stuff right here while trying to stop the whole thing, stuff like that. This is taking longer than I wanted it to. Let's see, parkour, wipeout of death. Oh yeah, I already went over that, just the wipeout course. And that's everything. I did it. Yay! I went through all of those. And so now I can actually get back to the start of the video. I'm sorry that these things are taking so long. I know these videos have been like 40 minutes each. I'm sorry. So anytime I need to think of like, oh, what goes on in this room? What should I have the story do next? I can take from that list and get inspiration, and always add to the list as I'm doing things in my daily life that I think about. So here we go. Here we go. So we have the starter 3 characters. My phone just went off. We have the starter 3 characters. Dude. One is Happy Swordsman, and he's got like a trench coat. I don't know. And then one is Mr. Knight Dude. That's because that's a helmet. Whoa. Then the other one was a ranger dude. Yeah, that's cool. Yeah, and then I think he had like a cool scarf thing, and he had a cape. So those are the three characters we're working with. They have been separated into one part of this massive tower. If I haven't mentioned that, by the way, this may be a dungeon, but it's actually an upward dungeon. So whereas you would normally expect a dungeon to go underground and fight down here, which makes sense, this one is a massive tower, and they're just constantly on their way up. And at some point, it splits into three pieces, and one team goes in that one team goes in another one, and so on, things like that. They get split up. I was also contemplating there being multiple towers, and sometimes one tower like connects to another tower here, and then things like that, and something like that. It's a dungeon. It's just going upwards. And so, uh, starting with the one that I thought of for the longest time and really started to get attached to. This one starts with an opening scene of them walking on a bridge. I should probably do a little bit better drawings than what I have on my notes. So they start out on this bridge, coming from the entrance where everyone went their separate ways. It's actually going to look bigger than this and kind of more grand, because I want to emphasize the size of this tower that they're in. There is just a chasm beneath them. It is very dark and you cannot see the bottom. There might be like some sconces on the wall, providing just a little bit of light on the walls back there. But it's just kind of like a transition room, and it's very big and open and scary and dark. And this is where they will kind of go over some small conversation that they're having between each other, but it's going to kind of answer a little bit of the questions that the viewer is going to have, like why it's these three people, why they don't have a healer. They kind of mention about how the party split up and went their separate ways. So they're having conversation with each other, but in that way they're kind of alluding to what's going on to kind of catch the viewer up with what's going on. Then they get to a puzzle room, which is probably what I was thinking on the most, was the puzzle room. And so this is probably the part that's going to take me the longest to explain. I feel like I already explained this once, but I went and do a little bit more detail in my head over that week of what was going to go on. There is a big room that they enter, and there is a door over here, and I should draw that from a bit of a different angle. So there is a door that has a keyhole on it. Pretty generic. It's a dungeon door, and you got to find the key to it. And then above that, there is going to be some stones on the wall that kind of blend in, but at the same time, like, you can tell that there's something there. And it's going to have this little bar on it that's split into three segments. And actually, I might put that on the other side there. Or just put something bigger and scarier over here, something like that. And there's going to be like I think a button like in the center of the room. I think that's where it's going to be at. And so they walk in, and up here is going to be a little like a little cage or something that has the key in it. But it's going to be really high up here, so probably even higher than this, to be honest. They walk in, they see the door, they realize that they can't unlock it. They see this weird thing up on the wall, and there might be some like little cage sewer looking things on the side of the room on the walls. And they can easily deduce that, oh, when we press this button, we're going to be able to find a way to open the door. But that's going to also probably make us do something that's going to really suck to be able to open this door. And they kind of contemplate like what this bar means, or what the skulls on the wall mean. And so they decide, like, all right, let's get ready for this. They kind of prepare themselves in some sort of way. They press the button, and then suddenly this one lights up, and the bar like very slowly starts to fill up, these cages open up on this side of the room, and some monsters start jumping down. And it's not really a whole lot, it's just like two or three. And then this side of the room, a bunch of the tiles and stones start like popping out and moving. So it's a moving like kind of platform puzzle and other sort of things. It's like a wipeout course, like I was pointing out in those last ideas of objectives. This wipeout course of moving pieces start popping up, and it lets you get a lot closer to the key. And so they have the idea of, okay, Ranger over here can do the best at jumping and, kind of parkour type of stuff. Let's set him on this piece of the room, and while Knight and Mr. Blade over here work on the monsters. Makes sense. And so they are starting to fight things over here. Ranger's kind of, working his way up what's going on here. And then from a different perspective, he might have, like this piece is going up and down. This piece is going in and out towards our perspective here. And things are trying to kind of push him back off to throw him back down at the bottom to make it so it's harder for him to ascend. And he keeps getting kind of stuck, saying like, I can't see where I'm going, the pieces are moving, I'm a little confused. And like he's pretty good at it, he just can't tell where he's supposed to jump to next, and by the time he figures it out, the puzzle moves and pushes him back down. And so Knight, being the tank here, he's still fighting, but Blade says like, hey, I'm going to help out with the puzzle, you got this, right? And he's like, yeah, I got this. And so Blade turns around and goes from the side of the room and tries to start helping over here by like standing and watching and giving directions to Mr. Ranger jumping around over here. And Knight's trying to fend things off by himself, being the tank he is. And around this time we enter this section. The gauge fills up and hits this part. And I think the lights in the room will kind of change to a different color of ambience, and then like more of these things will open up, or maybe more monsters will start flooding in. And so it starts getting even harder for him here. And they kind of realize that. And luckily with him being the tank, he can kind of handle this. But then they start to realize, like, wait a second, what happens here? And what happens here? And so they realize what kind of a time constraint that they're on, and that something very scary is about to happen. And so the Knight keeps trying to fight as best as he can. It's getting harder for him to handle. And then Blade is getting kind of nervous, trying to help Ranger around, and it's not going so well. And they keep trying. They're getting nervous. They're getting desperate. It hits this point, and even more monsters start to fill in the room. And the Knight's kind of getting overwhelmed. He's getting frustrated that they're not figuring this out fast enough. And so he kind of calls out to Blade and says like, hey, do you think you can handle this for just like 15 seconds and switch with me? And so he realizes that, oh, Knight has a plan. I should trust him because what I'm doing isn't working. And is like, yeah, switch. And so Knight comes over here, and Blade goes back. I'm going to kind of clean up my explanations here. That can probably stay for now. And so now Blade is over here, and he's trying his best to do his fighting, but for him it's mostly just dodging and weaving and trying to fend them off and take them down as he can, and just basically keep him away from over here. But he's not quite as good as at killing massive amounts of them at the same time. And then Knight is over here, and as he runs over here, he shouts to Ranger. He says like, hey, jump back down here. And he says, summon your hover bike, because I think I mentioned already that the flying vehicles are their mounts in this game. And so Ranger starts jumping back down, and I don't know if I want Ranger to summon his or if I want Knight to summon one. It doesn't really matter. And Blade gets kind of frustrated, kind of shouts back to them. This is just to let the viewer know about the rules of the world. He says something along the lines of, like, that's your big idea? You know those don't work in dungeons, or, like, flying vehicles don't work in dungeons. And so to mention that that's kind of cheating, and that it's not going to help out at all, because he thinks, like, oh, he's going to get on the bike and just fly up there and grab the key. But I just want to let the viewers know that, oh yeah, flying things don't work in here. And so as Ranger jumps down and they summon the bike, it'll like appear like it's going to work, and it's going to have like, you know, the little hover thing on the bottom. It starts up, and then like a spark happens, and the thing just crashes to the floor, only from like 2 feet up, but it just makes a loud bang as it just falls to the floor and shows that like, oh yeah, he's right, it doesn't work in here. And as Ranger's jumping down, the knight character literally just like deadlifts this thing and picks it up, and Ranger jumps onto it and hits the throttle on it. So it's boosting, but it's not hovering. And Knight literally just throws him up there with this thing shooting a boost out the back. And it gets him pretty close, but I think at some point, just a little bit before this, Ranger did make it up to the top, but realized he still couldn't reach the key. And so that's when the Knight called him down and did this. And so he throws him up there. The boost gets him most of the way up there, and then Ranger jumps off of that, clings onto the metal gate here, and reaches in and grabs the key. And then after having thrown that, Knight jumps back over here to try and help out with these monsters. They are very close to the boss one spawning here on the gauge, and as Ranger's jumping back down, it actually does hit that. The lights turn an even scarier color. They run to the door, trying to get past all these things. Ranger jumps back down. I think Ranger's going to use like one of his AoE attacks as he's jumping back down, and just like blast this whole area here with a ton of arrows, making just room just to get to the door. And a big boss monster starts to spawn in there, because they are at that time when it's time for the boss to spawn. And so all three of them make it to the door. There's 3 people here. And then there's just some massive, like, ogre-looking thing here. Rawr. And it starts to spawn in and try and whack at them. But as they put the key in the door, the thing, like, slowly turns to stone and freezes up just as it's about to attack them, and then just crumbles to dust. So, like, they realize that they did have a really terrifying fight that they were about to lose. But they put the key in just at the last second to get through the door and defeat the boss. Not really defeat the boss, but just turn it off kind of thing. And so the point of this is that I think back in like either episode 0 or episode 1, I said that there was a list of things that I wanted to accomplish in this story. And this puzzle room accomplishes the failed idea, or the failed plan, which it's not really the best failed plan, so maybe not so much. But, you know, things didn't work out, and they had to improvise, and so that was the Knight throwing the flying vehicle. Then I wanted to have something that shows the flying vehicle, and so that's taken up in there too. And then I wanted to have that moment where, I guess that goes into the failed plan, where they had to improvise something because there was nothing left to do and they were almost out of time. And so it kind of accomplished those things, shows what the fighting is like, kind of shows the teamwork and maybe like the relations between these people and who works well. You kind of see that like Knight and Blade aren't really the biggest fan of each other or something like that. And so that's that part done. Yay, we did it. All right. And so again, like I said, I was originally going to come up with just some basic building blocks and scoot them around and tell you what order I want it to be in, but this is the one that I thought about for too long and got too attached to. So these first ones are going to be kind of long explanations, whereas the next ones are going to be really short and simple. After the puzzle piece here, they were going to move into a mini boss room. And I think that's where I was going to actually include that weird looking thing from episode 0 that had a sword and was like really skinny and was really fast and whatnot. And there was going to be 3 of them, and then every time they defeated one, it was going to drop something that like had a colorful orb to it. And then once they got all 3 of them, they had to transfer it into the next room and plug it into a portal that would activate, and then that would take them somewhere else in the dungeon to get to the main boss fight, assumingly probably at the top of the tower is where that portal would take them. And so you can tell that most of my thinking was on that puzzle room, and then kind of lost all ideas from there. But that's just because I'm not done thinking about it. So this is pretty much what I have set in stone. This is what I definitely want to do so far. But I can change around the building blocks here. I have some ideas for the boss fight too, but it's how they get from here to the boss fight that I'm still working on. So that means, do I explain the second set of puzzle pieces or like building blocks, or do I go straight to the boss fight? The question came up in the story, like, why are they in this dungeon? What are they working towards? And I think that there is a villain type of person that is trying to get to the top of the tower and summon something. There's going to be a big monster up there that he is trying to summon. He believes that, like, oh, I'm going to summon like one of these most powerful things, and it's going to be big and scary. And because I summon it, it's going to listen to me, and I'm going to be powerful. And so they're trying to race him up there to stop it, or stop him, something like that. And as he summons this thing at the top, the guy is like almost an evil scientist kind of way. He's going to be shouting about how great he is, that he accomplished what he was trying to do, and orders this thing to slaughter them. And so he kind of stands there and just points like, all right, my minion, you listen to me now, get them. And then this thing is going to like raise up a big sword or something and just completely demolish this guy because he's not listening to him. And so I wanted to do that because I wanted, in this testing kind of animation, I wanted them to see what happens when one of the players of this world dies. And so I wanted this guy to get completely just devastated and completely removed. And so the main guy that they're chasing down accomplishes what he was doing and then is removed from the equation. And now they're stuck cleaning up his mess, which is the big monster thing there. And then I was thinking that if I do actually go into what the other party members are doing, each one of them is going to find something along the way, like an orb of some sort that's glowing different colors, and for whatever reason, someone in each one of those mini parties decides, I should hold on to this. This might be important later. And that this guy can't be hurt or has a shield around him of some sort until they all break these by throwing it at him. And then that puts the shield down and allows them to defeat it. And so if they didn't bring it with them, then that would have been really bad. Another thing that I want to do with the boss fight is I wanted to show like why this guy is dangerous, and so he needs to leave the tower and like threaten to go destroy the city or something like that. And so it might fly away towards the city of some sort, or I think I was having an idea of it having like a little partner that's small that can escape and try and get away. And someone is actually going to like jump out of a window by breaking through it with the flying vehicle and just start dropping off of the tower. And it's really scary because the flying vehicles doesn't work in dungeons, but at some point once they fall far enough it'll kind of kick in and start working again, and that's just kind of this little gambit that he makes to chase after this little thing that flew away towards the city. And so they're in this great fall on this insanely tall tower on this bike, just waiting for it to work to try and stop them from dying, from falling to their death, and then go chase after this thing while some of them are left up here fighting the big monster. And I think what I want to do with the big monster is kind of, let the fight go on for a little bit, and then I had this idea where it's kind of time to hit the red button and escape and get away. And so everyone's trying to get away, but the knight is the one tanking it, letting them get away. And this goes into the Sakuga that I wanted to bring into the story. They're like well animated, like everything's exploding, debris is flying everywhere. I needed to fill that criteria for this animation. And I want the knight to put the shield away, which is usually what he uses for tanking, and take out his big like great axe type of thing, which is mostly for crowd control, really big heavy hits, very slow kind of thing. And he kind of has this final stand on the tower with the big monster, and as Knight's already kind of like low on health, of some sort, the big monster raises up his sword again, really high in the air. Um, while Knight's down here on the floor with his big weapon. Scary monster. I don't know if I need to draw this or if you guys are okay with me just talking over some points. And he's up at the top of the tower. Everyone's trying to get away. And Knight declares something really cool, just like, if I'm going down here, so are you. And so you think like, oh, he's gonna like just kind of starburst stream this thing and try and just use what's left of him and see if he can beat him before he gets beaten himself. And so then Knight starts charging up his big weapon, and people are begging him to just get out of there. And as this thing starts swinging his weapon down, he swings his weapon, but instead of swinging it at the big boss monster, he just strikes the ground with it. Something, you know, bang. And it literally destroys the floor that they're standing on, breaks apart, causes a fissure across the whole tower, just kind of like cracks the ground, destroys the top piece of the tower, and the floor falls out from underneath them. So it makes this guy miss with his big swing because the floor is now gone and they're falling, and then the whole tower kind of like starts to fall down and pancake on itself and starts crumbling. And then suddenly everyone's just kind of in this free fall amongst a ton of debris, while there's this big massive monster falling above them, and they're trying to get out of the way, trying not to die, trying to find something to stand on. And I think as the big monster guy is falling, I wanted to have one of the other characters, whether it be like the Blade or the Knuckle Duster kind of guy, who is also falling. I think they're like starting to also get on their bikes, even though it's not working, but they want to have that chance of being able to fly. One of them throws another one, and because Knight's in a free fall and he's not holding on to any block, so he can't move, and someone throws it at him, or throws another person at them to grab him, push him over here, get caught by this person over here, just get out of the way of this thing falling down, crashing through the tower. And that's how they make their escape, and it somehow kills the boss in the end. Okay, I did it. I did it. This is going to be another 40-minute one, isn't it? Oh man, I didn't look at the clock at when I started this. So I promise you, I'm almost done. From here on out, I am almost done. That was what I had been thinking about. That's what I wanted to tell you for the past like week and a half. But then I came back and realized, oh, I need to come up with some other scenarios so I can choose which one sounds best and will work out. And then I actually, or accidentally, just thought all that through instead. And so now the other things that I was trying to figure out for the story, I decided like, oh, this will just make a lot more sense if instead of coming up with a bunch of different options for these guys, just take these other options and make it what these guys do. The second idea, this is number 2. They come in on that bridge. This is how I was drawing the bridge on my notes, was just something like that, because like, oh, there's a door over here, a bridge, ooh, people, chasm, yep. And this bridge, however, doesn't make it to the other end of the room where there's a door. It's broken off, and there's just this big chasm, and there's like no chance of them reaching this door. And so they come to the end of it there, and they look down off the edge, and they think like, oh, what are we gonna do now? Like, there's nowhere to go. And so one of the party members has a map open, and kind of in a similar fashion of Sword Art Online, there's one moment where there's a confrontation between the main character and a guild. The guild is saying like, hey, if you have the map drawn out for this place, give it to us. We're trying to help everyone, and so you owe it to us to give us that map that you made. And they don't like that, but he's like, yeah, I was thinking about giving the map away anyway, so here, take the map. That doesn't sound too important, but I kind of wanted the world to work in that way too, where if there's a new dungeon that people haven't made it to, there's no map of it until someone actually goes through it. So sometimes there will be half a map if they didn't make it through the dungeon, or there'll be pieces of the map missing if no one's gone there before. And so I wanted to use that same thing here, where people who have made it up this far in the dungeon before also got stuck at this point where they're like, oh, how do we get to this door? We can't do it. And so one of them opens up the map and says to the rest of his team, says, "Oh, it says here on the map that it's safe to jump down into the chasm, and that there's actually a bunch of water down here, and it's safe to jump down." And so then, this is going to be a lot of a build-up for a stupid joke, but the other team thinks like, "Oh wow, that's really nice that they included that there," and then someone else points out, they said, "But who in the right mind was dumb enough to jump down there and test it to see if it was safe? Because if they would have died if not." And the guy reading the map says like, "Wait, he has like a little footnote, a little asterisk here." And so that's like on this part of the map, there's like, "Oh, also see the bottom for this footnote," and reads at the bottom, and it says like, "Yeah, my teammate pushed me down, or like got mad at me and kicked me off the edge." And I just kind of want the camera to pan from looking at the person looking at the map to like where he kind of moves to the right and you see someone standing behind them, and it's just going to be like a recreation of that meme from Avatar of just, "That's rough, buddy." I don't know why that tickled me so much, but so that's going to be how they learn that someone has been there before, and they're almost at the end of their map to where it cuts off, and they learn that it is safe to jump down. And then at the bottom of that one is going to be a water puzzle where they land in the water. There's going to be some platforms in the water, and there's going to be some sort of puzzle that they have to do here to get to the next area, whether it be somehow getting back up here, maybe going underwater, finding a door underneath, or some sort of teleportation to get out of there. And it seems simple enough when they jump in the water, but there's actually a great big water beast down here that was not mentioned on the map that they have to really watch out for. And that's as far as I got with plan number 2. So that one isn't really drawn out as far. Plan number 3, though, is actually like even less than that. I think instead of them starting out on the bridge, I wanted them like crawling through like an air duct type of thing. I don't even know if that's necessary in this universe, but there's this little tiny hole in the ceiling that they're crawling through every so often. They can look down at what's going on inside the room, and they're all crawling through the room. What happened to his head? There we go. But when they do look down in here, there are some terrifyingly big monsters just kind of looming around in the dark that they realize, like, we really don't want to fight those things, so be very quiet and careful as you're crawling through here. And then, something goes wrong. They fall down in there in the darkness and have to try and fend off against these monsters in the dark. I want it to be something where they can barely see in front of them. So it's basically, if you were looking at it from a different perspective, you have the 3 people standing here, and they can't see what's in the dark around them. There's just all these like looming faces and things just jumping in, attacking them really quickly at random. They're trying to defend themselves. I think there was a phone game that I got this inspiration from. If I can remember what it is, I'll try and put a picture of it on screen. Or maybe just like a small, I don't know. But these horrifying things were just jumping out from the darkness, and they were trying to defend themselves. And I don't know where they go from there. And then I had a plan 4, again, even less than the first one, which is that instead of coming in on this bridge, you enter in to see them on these like swinging platforms that's above a giant chasm, so they don't want to fall down here, and everyone's like trying to jump from platform to platform, but they're swinging, and it's really scary. And then I think I put that they were going to find an artifact of some sort that was going to like kind of guide them. I think I drew like a little statue on this paper. It was like holding a sword, and the sword was changing colors, and this thing like had wings on it to kind of represent like, oh, this is the guardian, this is the thing that's supposed to be helping you. And as they walk around with it, like the sword is changing colors or something like that, that kind of leads them around. And that is all I've done. That is where I am at. Yeah. I did it. I beat my procrastination. Honestly, I only beat the procrastination this week because I have to clean the house. And I decided I wanted to do this instead. Oh, wish me luck. So next time, Oh boy. Next time. Whoops. What layer did I draw down? Did I draw it on? Oh, I drew it up there. That's okay. I can get rid of that. Next time, what I think I have to do. Next time on Dragon Balls P. Woo. Um, I can do two things. I can try and refine. Number one, I got the entrance. I got the puzzle. And if you guys want, I can continue and refine out the next parts here to get to that boss room, because I kind of came up with what happens at the boss, what happens in the puzzle, but these steps in between were still kind of hazy. So I can either refine that out. I can try and work on 2 and 3 to finish those up. It's kind of still more story building. I kind of wish I could do something different this week that wasn't story building. But it looks like that's going to kind of be what it has to be. I can also try and decide on what class of characters are in the other rooms that, makes up the whole party. I could start sometime soon on coming up with what the characters actually look like and what their names are and things like that. I do want to do that soon, but I still feel like it's a little early for that. And then after that, I think I want to come up with a few hover bike designs, because I just keep drawing it like this so far, but I want to work on designing some of these for people to use, or little hoverboards and whatnot. I could come up with some monster designs for the things that they're actually fighting. I'd like to do that on camera rather than off camera, so I guess I'm stuck just coming up with more of these. Yay. I'm gonna do my best though. Thank you for watching, and wish me luck. Goodbye.